Draft Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Regulations 2024.
Is it the wish of the committee that the instruments be debated together?
Aye.
I will now call the Minister to move the first motion and speak to all the instruments. At the end of the debate, I'll put the question on the first motion and then ask the Minister to move the remaining motions formally. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning. I beg to move that the committee consider the draft Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Regulations, the draft Hull and East Yorkshire Combined Authority Order, the draft Greater Lincolnshire Combined County Authority Regulations, and the draft Lancashire Combined County Authority Regulations. Regulations were laid before Parliament on the 26th of November 2024 for Lancashire and for Devon and Torbay. The Hull and East Yorkshire Combined Authority Order was laid on the 4th of December 2024 and the Greater Lincolnshire Regulations on the 11th of December 2024. I invite members to agree that whilst recognising combined authorities and combined county authorities are distinct legal bodies with different enabling statutory instruments, I simply use the combined authorities hereafter unless there is specific reason during the course of the debate to separate them out. On delivering our manifesto commitment in December 2024, the Government published the English Devolution White Paper. The White Paper sets out how the Government will widen and deepen devolution across England as part of our central mission to drive economic growth and to improve living standards. These instruments are part of fulfilling that mission, moving power out of Westminster and back to those who know their areas best. There are significant milestones in the devolution journeys of these four areas. The instruments provide for the implementation of the devolution agreements confirmed on the 19th of September 2024 between the Government and the upper tier councils in each of the areas concerned. On the 18th of November 2024, all the respective constituent councils consented to the making of these instruments. The combined authority order will be made, if Parliament approves, under the enabling provision in the Local Democracy, Economic Development and Construction Act 2009. The three sets of combined county authority regulations will be made, if approved, under the enabling provisions in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023. All four authorities will be established on the day after on which these instruments are made. Greater Lincolnshire Combined County Authority and the Hull and East Yorkshire Combined Authority have chosen to adopt a mayor for their authorities, with the inaugural elections taking place on the 1st of May this year. The elected mayors will take up office on the 6th of May with a 4-year term. The new mayors will take up their seats on the Council of Nations and Regions. The instrument makes provision for the government's arrangements for combined authorities. Each authority has specific arrangements enabled by either the 2023 or 2009 Acts set out in their establishment instruments being considered by the House today. In each case, the constituent councils nominate one or more of their members to form the combined authority, sitting alongside the mayor where a mayor is being adopted. District council representation and input into the combined county authorities is determined locally within the framework provided by the 2023 Act. I know from my conversations with local leaders and through commitments that they have made that district councils will play a key role in ensuring the success of devolution in those areas. The instruments confer on the public authority and local authority functions on the respective combined authorities, as agreed in their devolution agreement and set out in each area's proposals. Accompanying the order, we have laid a Section 105B report and a Section 26 report for the regulations, providing details about the public authority functions being devolved to these authorities. These include powers over transport, Homes England, and concurrent regeneration functions, as well as mayoral development corporation functions for the mayoral combined authorities. Additional funding will be available to the areas through the Adult Skills Fund, devolved to combined authorities from the 26-27 academic year, as well as education and skills functions. The Department for Education will work with the combined authorities to support their preparations and ensure they meet the necessary readiness criteria. And we will legislate in due course when the Secretary of State for Education is assured that they are operationally ready and is satisfied that the required statutory tests have been met in each of those areas. As provided for in the Enabling Acts, the constituent councils consulted on the proposals to establish the combined authorities based on their devolution agreements. These consultations took place between December 2023 and March 2024 for the periods of either 6 or 8 weeks. Council promoted the consultations using social media communication campaigns, dedicated websites, and online and in-person events with the public. The Councils also undertook targeted stakeholder engagement with businesses, the voluntary sector, and key institutions within their areas. Responses could be made online via their website, by email, or on paper via the post, or at dedicated events or collection points, such as local libraries. I can report that the necessary statutory requirements in the 2023 and 2009 Acts have been considered, and the authorities preparing the proposals have provided the Secretary of State with a summary of the consultation responses when submitting their proposals to the Government in spring 2024.
Lewis Cocking.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I draw members' attention to my register of interest. Maybe the Minister could comment. Some of these areas that we're looking at today are still two-tier areas. So could you just outline what the Government's approach is moving forward? And can two-tier areas create combined authorities? Or is it the Government's ambition that only new combined authorities will be created where there's wholly unitary councils?
Minister.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the intervention and a very good point in terms of how we manage the transition from where we are today to the English Devolution Bill when it eventually does become law. So we have a very wide ambition to both widen devolution and to deepen it. That means that we don't want to wait for the English Devolution Bill to be in place, and the expressions of interest that we've had from the deadline last week has shown a significant interest from local areas who want both reorganisation and devolution. And so there will be a streamlining, if you like, of the process between devolution and reorganisation, where a two-tier area could provide for a combined county authority today, go through reorganisation, and when reorganisation takes place, can then convert to a combined authority at that point in a single-tier system. And so these are transitional arrangements. Ultimately, in the end, by the time the devolution programme is finished, we would expect that in most areas, if not all, the two-tier system will come to an end and there'll be unitary councils forming that combined arrangement going forward. If I carry on, in laying these instruments before Parliament, the Secretary of State is satisfied that the statutory tests in the 2009 Act and the 2023 Act are met, namely that the constituent councils have consented to the establishment of the combined authorities and that no further consultation is necessary, and making the instruments would be likely to improve the economic, social and environmental well-being of some or all of the people who live or work in the area. Appropriate, having regard to the need to reflect the identity of the local communities and to secure effective and convenient local government, and that establishing the combined authorities will achieve the purposes specified in the constituent council's proposals. The making of these instruments will shift money from central government to our regions as set out in their devolution agreements. This includes capital funding for each area and mayoral investment funds for areas choosing to adopt a mayor. And so to conclude, I would like to personally thank the local leaders and their councils for their hard work, for the vital role that they have played in making the government's critical mission to widen and deepen devolution a reality in those areas. And I commend these instruments to the committee.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Regulations 2024. Mr Simmons.
Thank you, Mr Mandela. It's a pleasure, as always, to serve with you in the chair today. And may I start where the Minister finished, sharing the thanks of this side for the work that's been done by local government leaders up and down the country, as reflected both by the geographical dispersal of the regulations that we are debating today, but also other proposals that we know are coming forward. We're broadly supportive of the measures that are outlined in this instrument, and you'll be pleased to know, Mr Mundell, we have no intention of seeking to divide the committee on the matters before us. But I have a couple of points and questions which I would like to put to the Minister, which I know are relevant not just to each of these instruments, but also of general interest in the way the government is going to approach these issues in the future. The first of these is the issue of how we ensure that the precepts that will arise from these authorities are kept within reasonable limits. And we know governments of all stripes have had different approaches to that, whether there are referendum limits or council tax or otherwise. We do know, however, in London, for example, there's been a huge increase in the level of the mayoral precept over the years. And clearly, council taxpayers will want an assurance that those precepts, firstly, will not be used to backfill a shortfall in funding from central government for those things which central government is mandating these authorities to to undertake. They'll want to know that those precepts are genuinely under local control. And it'd be helpful to understand what the government's thinking is around where they sit, both within future council tax referendum limits and what expectations they may have or they may have set in discussion with each of these new combined authorities about how that precepting process will be handled, what it is intended to fund at a local level, and how those decisions will be accountable both to local residents and to the councils that will form part of those authorities. The second issue which I would like to raise is one of how debts that may arise from each of these authorities will be handled. We know there have been a number of measures brought forward by government around the borrowing limits and the freedom to borrow of combined authorities, and we welcome that. It's a positive step to enable them to borrow to invest locally. However, we are also very conscious that there are a number of authorities that have found themselves in effect overborrowed in the past. There are a number of sources of debts which local authorities can access when they need to borrow. Historically, the Public Works Loan Board was the main source of that funding, and we all saw the significant impact when the interest rate of the Public Works Loan Board was doubled from a modest 1% to 2% under a previous government but one. Clearly, interest rates since that point have significantly risen, but it remains the case that government can secure debt at a much cheaper rate than individual local authorities generally can, and can make it available through the Public Works Loan Board mechanism as a means of minimising those costs. There's also the Local Government Bonds Agency, launched by the Local Government Association, of which I should declare I'm a parliamentary vice president, which is an additional source of bond funding for local authorities that wish to invest in larger scale capital projects. However, we've heard a lot of members expressing degrees of concern in debates about local government finance and restructuring about how those debts will be handled. Firstly, where those debts are incurred, for example, as part of larger central government given capital projects, connectivity, railway infrastructure, things like that, where individual local authorities along the route may be asked to borrow to part finance elements of that. But also where they have arisen through investments, and particularly investments which sadly do sometimes go wrong. So we'd like to seek some assurance that the government has done some thinking and either has already identified a process or is working on identifying a process for ensuring that levels of debt, whether those become unsustainable or whether because they are long-term debt are likely to fall over into new kinds of future models of combined authority under the new local government restructuring white paper which is coming forward, or under future governments, that there is a process for ensuring that those do not become inappropriately burdensome on council taxpayers. Mr Mindal, with those questions to the Minister, I will.
Ms Slade, do you wish to make a contribution? In that case, I call the Minister to respond to the debate.
Thank you. Can I thank the honourable members for the contribution today, and also for the support for the measures. I think one thing that has kind of stood out over quite a long period actually is that if you believe in devolution, that most of this rises far above party politics. It's a more structural change in how the country is governed and where power sits, and so there may be differences about pace perhaps, and maybe about focus, and there will always be a conversation about resourcing, but the direction of travel that we're embarking on to take powers away from Westminster into the hands of those who know their areas best is absolutely one that is shared by many members across the House. On the particular point around the precepts, I know that this is an issue that we talk about quite often. I believe strongly that a precept is the most transparent way of the taxpayers being able to hold to account those who are spending public money on their behalf, because the reality is that mayoral functions cost money. It costs money to establish a mayoral office, it costs money to carry out mayoral functions, and the more responsibilities and duties that we devolve down, and there are significant areas of competences that are published in the white paper, the more that mayors and combined authorities will need to marshal to provide the staffing support and resource to deliver that. And so there are two ways of doing that. It's either done through a levy provided to each local authority to pay what I would say through the back door. That doesn't appear on people's council tax bills. It's a payment that is agreed from council to combined authority, or we do it through a precept. And the benefit of a precept is it raises the transparency. It's published on everyone's council tax bill. They know exactly what they're paying for. And I think in terms of democracy and accountability, that just makes it a lot easier to hold the mayor to account for the money that's being spent in their name. And so I accept that any broaching towards any kind of sense of new taxation at a time when people are still kind of reeling from the cost of living crisis and people kind of recognise the impact that tax has will be a consideration. But we are very clear that this is not a new tax in the overall sense. This is about transparency within the tax system so that people can see where the money is really going. In terms of the borrowing limits that he mentions quite rightly, I mean, we have seen examples of where some local authorities have borrowed far in excess of their revenue to the point that they're now financially unviable. And we all know the local authorities in scope for that. When it comes to combined authorities, they will agree with HMT what their borrowing cap will be, and they'll only be able to borrow within that borrowing cap, providing that they can have the revenue to support that borrowing liability. But we have seen, and I kind of reflect on Greater Manchester, where I was a councillor and now Member of Parliament, where we were able to align locally directed money, some of which was borrowing, some of it was local authority contributions, to extend the tram system. And the benefit of the tram system, one, is it unlocked private sector investment of a significant amount of money. It allowed the central government to align its capital programme to what we're doing locally. But importantly, it had an earn-back mechanism that allowed for the ticket sale revenue to be offset against the loan liability. And so in that sense, it is a self-financing model that can grow, and ultimately that loan will be paid off. But we'll always have a tram system that people will use, that people will pay ticket price for, and that will generate revenue and create jobs and be good for the economy. So I think providing that HMT cap is in place, that should give members the assurance that it won't be excessive. The other thing I'll say is that this is not a measure taken in isolation. We're doing a huge amount on the reform of the local government pension scheme that I believe, and many members believe, is an untapped potential for growth in this country. So it's the largest pension scheme here in the UK, £400 billion. It's the sixth largest in the world. But I don't think we realise the benefit of that in our towns and cities in the way that we should do in terms of local investment. If we can unlock even a small percentage of investment more, that could be transformational. And what the English Devolution Bill does is to put a duty requirement on mayors and their combined authorities and the pension schemes to work together to create a pipeline of investable products. And I think that could be really kind of game-changing in those areas.
Give way on that point.
Yeah. Mr. Simmons?
Thank you. Mr. Mundell, I just want to put the minutes in the light of what he's just said to us about the pension schemes. We know in the past, previous governments have introduced pensions pooling. So there is already a London pool, for example, the 33 London local authorities and the City of London have a pool pension scheme. Two of the issues that always arise from that, the trustees of the pension fund have a fiduciary duty in law to serve the best interests of the pensioners. So their obligation is not to seek the best investment from the government's point of view, it's to do what generates the return so that those people can rely on that income when they retire. And having been part of that process of changing some of those regulations to allow a greater share of the pool to be invested in infrastructure, for example, I'm aware that that conflict with fiduciary duty has always been one which the Treasury has a considerable concern about, because ultimately, if there is a shortfall, it will fall back on taxpayers in another form because of the statutory nature of the schemes. The other issue is to do with the profile of individual pension funds. So we know that the London Borough of Hillingdon, which serves about 2/3 of my constituency, has a much younger workforce profile than the London Borough of Ealing, for example, next door. And therefore the investment intentions of the trustees is based on the need to serve the longer term interest of a much larger pool of young people who will need those pensions for 50, 60 years ahead, whereas Ealing's pensioners are on the whole older, and therefore the investment intentions are different. So I'd be interested in what regulatory change the Minister has in mind, both to address the issue of the fiduciary duties of trustees being in conflict with the government's intentions of seeing this as a kind of sovereign wealth fund, which potentially it could be, and how it will address the fact that the duties in respect of the different workforce profiles of individual pension funds may mean that their pooled investment choices will be more challenging where there are substantial age differences.
Minister.
I'll be careful not to stray too far from the subject, but given I raised it, the pension funds, as they stand, we're out to consultation at the moment, so the exact construct in terms of the requirement to invest via the pools rather than individual pension funds is still subject to those discussions. But we accept, of course, that the fiduciary duties that pension fund members have and their boards have will always be the case. And so the English Devolution Bill doesn't require almost like blind investment regardless of the consequences. It requires an investable product to be created. And that really is the test. Is it a safe, secure, and does it provide a return on investment that can hold water or not. So that is a requirement. We need to say, again, that this is a £400 billion investment pot. Even 5% of that, unlocking £20 billion to UK PLC investment would be significant and could be game-changing. So I think we need to kind of keep that in context, but reflect entirely the caution that needs to be approached with this, given that in the end it's pensioners and future pensioners that fund needs to be there for. Honourable members, these instruments deliver the commitment made in the devolution agreements with Devon and Torbay, Greater Lincolnshire and Lancashire to establish combined county authorities and a combined authority for Hull and for East Yorkshire. And I beg to move that the regulations and the order are approved by the committee.
The question is that the committee has considered draft Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Regulations 2024. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Draft Greater Lincolnshire Combined County Authority Regulations 2025.
Minister to move formally.
Move.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Greater Lincolnshire Combined County Authority Regulations 2025. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Draft Hull and East Yorkshire Combined Authority Order 2025.
Minister to move formally.
Move.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Hull and East Yorkshire Combined Authority Order 2025. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Draft Lancashire Combined County Authority Regulations 2024.
Minister to move formally.
Move.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Lancashire Combined County Authority Regulations 2024. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.